Yeah, so before getting into your music, I wondered, take us back a wee bit. Do you remember the moment when you realised how cathartic music could be?
Oh man, not the first moment, but I remember there being moments. I remember feeling moments of real catharsis when I was listening to music. Like I remember feeling particularly taken by, especially actually when writing when writing this record, when writing Love, Death and Dancing. I remember having some real moments of listening to music that I felt was doing the thing I know I have been able to do for other people, in the sense of like making music that kind of seems to resonate on a level with an audience that I don't often think people, when they're writing music, realise that that's what their music is doing. I know that that's not what I intended to do with Phase, for example, with the first album, but I know that a lot of people have like used Surprise Yourself in as like music when walking down the aisle at weddings, or they've used Weathered when they've had their first dances at weddings, or they've had lyrics of mine tattooed on parts of their body, like just having a genuine connection to a piece of music that somebody else has made, someone you've never met before. I kind of obviously have never meant to do that, but that's something that has happened when I've written music. I know that there's a band, for example, called the Bell Brigade, who haven't released any music as a band, as a collective, since like 2015, I don't think, but like I started listening to them when I was making this record, and there's a couple of songs of theirs, one in particular on a record of theirs called Just Because. There's a song called Metropolis, which is, I think, a song about having anxiety and social anxiety, particularly in a city like Los Angeles. And it's just a really specific song about someone's experience about going out into a city when they don't feel like they belong in that city. And I remember hearing it for the first time when I was in LA, or hearing it for the first time when I was in LA a couple of years ago, and it just like fucking hit me right in the face. And yeah, like just that word is fantastic, cathartic. That feeling of just having something massaged out of you by somebody else's words. It only happens to me very rarely, but when it does, it really, really affects me.
Yeah. With what you were speaking about earlier on, kind of about the process for writing the new album, and how that kind of helped. Obviously, you've spoken a wee bit about how you went through a bit of a troubled period before you came and created the record. Does the record almost become a part of the recovery process?
It's funnily enough this time, and I say this time, it's the only second time I've ever done it, but I don't think there is a recovery process. I think it's an ongoing cyclical learning habit. At least I think that's what I think that's what I am. Like, I think that's what my brain is. My like emotional journey, at least. I had a couple of years of weird stuff, and a lot of that was around the time when I was releasing and promoting the first record. It's been 3 years of uncertainty, really, and a lot of self-doubt. But what I've come to really love, what I've come to really appreciate, is I'm not recovering from something. I am ongoing with it. I'm still in that moment of self-doubt and uncertainty, and I'm not entirely sure, or not really convinced, that I will ever recover from it. I think it gives the impression that there will be a moment when I will decide I'm fixed or I'm fine, and I just don't think that's ever going to happen for me emotionally. I don't really think that happens for people. I have a really good friend of mine who was through a lot of personal issues that he was having in his life, decided to swear off of alcohol, and he became he went teetotal, and he went sober, and did that for a few years, and it helped him through a lot. But recently he's started drinking again, and there's a lot of people who would probably a lot of recovering alcoholics who would consider that a failure of some sort, I guess. Not to speak on their behalf, I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't know the terminology, or I don't know the kind of vocabulary that one would use, but all I can see from his perspective is that him being able to use something that was at one point harming to him, and to be able to use it now and have control over it is the success for him. His recovery has meant that he's been able to then act in that behavior again. It's like, it's a cyclical thing. It comes around like that, I think. Or at least that's how it has been for him. It's how it's been for me with my things, for him with his things. I don't know. Yeah, recovery is an interesting word. I don't know whether it comes with a stigma attached to it, that with recovery comes a new set of armour. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you're still open to the same pains, even though you've recovered from them. I think it's just how you recover next time that changes. I think you learn how to recover better every time something knocks you, maybe.
Can you almost use music as a form of treatment, though, in some ways? Does it help?
I think some people do. I don't. I think that's because I use it. I write through it. I have music to give, and so I kind of find it hard to then use music as a form of medication. But I know, like I said earlier, there are so many people who have spoken to me about the way that my music has been able to, medicate them in whatever way, whether that be emotionally or spiritually or physically. People have been able to use the music that I've made to make great leaps and bounds for their own self-recovery. It's a real honour to be able to kind of support people I don't know in that kind of way. But for me, writing this album wasn't a means of therapy. It was simply just an act of inarguable pride. Like, I had to do it. I had to write this music because I had to write something, and I knew that if I was going to write something, I was going to be honest about what I was writing. And to be honest, I had to think about how I was feeling and really try and connect with myself, and that itself was an act of difficulty. Just connecting with myself in any sort of way that made me feel something for myself again. But this music, the album Love, Death and Dancing, like what I've made, is the first time I've connected with music I've made in 4-5 years. Yeah.
You mentioned there as well about being honest with the music. Do you think being honest in your songwriting has made you more honest in life outside of music?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I think it has to. Because in being honest with myself, I learned a lot about myself that I didn't necessarily know, which then helped me kind of govern my relationships with other people in better ways. I can't fully be there for someone else if I don't know how to be there for myself. And I found myself in positions where I had to support my own emotional journey. I had to support my wife's emotional journeys, my family's, my friends. Like, not because I am a pillar for those people, but simply just because I want to be a good member of that community, of my family's community, my friends' community. I want to be someone that people can rely on, and I don't want to be a weak support. I need to be strong for other people. I need to be strong for myself. I kind of, in writing this, did find a new type of strength. Not a new level of it, not like more strength or a stronger strength, just a new type of it. I think it's a really lovely way to think about growth, that it's not leveling up, it's just new versions of the things that you had before.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier to be more honest in your songwriting or more honest in life, or is there?
That's a good question. It depends on the song, and it depends on the moment in life, I guess. They bleed into each other quite a lot. Like, a lot of what I've written about on this record comes from the therapy that I had, comes from conversations I've had, comes from the life that I've lived. But then a lot of what's making me able to talk to people now, especially in these situations, sitting down with journalists and sitting down with people asking questions like this, a lot of my answers are influenced by the music I made. So, the art imitating life, imitating art. It's all cyclical. It's funny looking back on Phase especially, and how prevalent circles were just as an imagery, as a piece of imagery in that record, because I've come away from that. I came away from that feeling so lost and so clouded, and a circle is such a defined shape. I came away from that feeling so confused, and we're bringing cyclical imagery back into this record as well, just because I feel so connected to that as a running theme of my life. Just, you can always learn from yourself, but you can't beat yourself up if you relive or react certain things that you might have done in your past, because I am an animal. I am an animal of cyclical behaviour. Like I absolutely am. Yeah, the art imitating life thing just kind of makes me think about that quite a lot. A lot of what I write, I end up talking about. A lot of what I talk about, I end up writing.
Yeah. Do you think with this new record and making that your relationship with music has changed or evolved in any way?
Yeah, it has. It's changed a lot. I fell out of love with music for a really long time. I couldn't listen to music. There was so much music happening, so much new music. I couldn't keep up, and the idea of trying to keep up was more intimidating than just doing it. Like I was like bludgeoned into silence by the fact that there was just so much of it. And that was something I was a part of. I was a part of like the new music scene in 2015, 2016. And then so quickly I was old music, because it's just replaced every New Music Friday. There's 4,000 new songs that exist, and now more than ever anyone can listen to them whenever they want, which is like fucking terrifying. It's incredible, and it, like I said, it was a real bludgeoning thing. It kind of forced me into feeling like I had to be silent for a bit. And then that became addictive, and I was silent for too long, and then that stopped me from being able to write again. So my relationship with music is now, I treat it more like a resource than I do a privilege. Just because I have it at my fingertips doesn't mean that it's mine forever. I also don't own a lot of the music I listen to. I rent it from, streaming services, and the minute I stop spending money on the streaming service, the music all disappears. I don't own it. So that's what I mean by treating it as like a delicate resource. That's why I like listening to vinyl, because it's mine, no one's gonna take that away from me. It's my physical copy of this album I love. But the ritual involved with listening to it helps me connect with it in a different way to when I'm scrolling and listening. Not to shun that experience either, because that's a totally different thing. Like we're releasing the album in 4 volumes on streaming services, specifically for the reason that the listening experience is different to how it was 4 years ago when I released Phase, literally to the day. So we've got it in like these 4 volumes, but then the physical version of the album for like CD and vinyl and stuff like that, it's just tracks 1 to 12, but in a different playlist, in a different order, because it's for a totally different listening experience as well. I think we should treat our relationships with music like that, with more delicacy and with more care. Otherwise, it will only continue to the level of the quality of it will only continue to deteriorate, because we don't care enough to encourage it to be the best version of itself.
Do you think music, like what you're saying about consuming it through streaming services, but also consuming it with vinyl, do you think it has a different effect on your brain depending on which way you consume it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does. I remember someone was telling me that there was a study that was done about the way that analog affects the emotional experience of listening to something. I can't remember what it was, but it's like there's some sort of correlation, and I'm aware that I'm chatting out of my ass right now, but there's some sort of correlation between the tone of sound and the type of sound that's created by analog instruments and that's created through vinyl that is obviously different to digital, because it's a completely different shape of wave, and it affects you differently, your ears differently, your brain differently, the chemical that you release to give you your enjoyment is a different one when you listen to digital music than when you listen to analog music. I'm pretty sure, and again I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is factually correct. So absolutely there is a difference to it. It's the reason why Prince recorded all of his music at a different, tuned all of his music when he recorded it different to concert A, which is 440 kilohertz. He tuned everything to, I think it's 444 or something stupid like that. It's a subtle difference, but to him was the complete emotional change that's made by that tiny detail. And arguably it worked for someone like him, and I know there's a lot of people who treat music with that sort of with that level attention to detail. I'm one of them. I care about the detail of the music that I make, because I think the details that people don't notice are the most important ones. Whether they were, if they weren't there, it wouldn't be obvious, but because they're there, it's different.
When you're creating it as well, do you listen to it on different platforms to try and figure out what you're speaking about there, how you resonate with it differently, or how do you kind of adapt as an artist to?
I find I listen to different music on different platforms. So like I listen to different kinds of music depending on where I am. So my vinyl collection is very different to the albums I've got saved on Spotify, for example. Because it is just a different listening experience. There's music I take time with. There's music I don't rush through, but there's music that that creates a different level of speed within me, I guess. But I don't know. I'm interested to see how this album, How Love, Death and Dancing, feels on all the different platforms through which you can listen to music now. Because I've been listening to it on the physical playlist, so track 1 to 12, and I know that playlist off by heart. I curated that myself. I went through it and made sure that it tells the right kind of story I want it to tell. And the 4 volumes, I collected those together. Each volume has 3 songs on it, and I collected them all together to kind of have similar sharing sounds. So I don't know, I'm interested to see what people are going to favour. I hope it creates some sort of a conversation as well between... Excuse me. I hope it creates some sort of a conversation as well between the listeners and between fans and the audience. I hope people ask each other what they prefer, if they prefer the vinyl or if they prefer the streaming version, because they are different. They're 4 different experiences, but for the same set of ears. Yeah. I think it makes sense. I don't know. It might not. We'll see.
I've got one left.
Yeah, no, go
before
ahead.
I let you go.
Yeah, of course.
It's more of a general one, but do you think your music is more fueled by misery or happiness?
It's not fueled by one or the other. It's not binary like that. It's fueled by. A lot of it for me is fueled by fear, because through fear can come so many different types of emotions. You can find courage in fear, you can find terror in fear, you can find happiness in the relief of fear, you can find sadness in the expectation of fear. But the fear is knowing that I will never be able to do anything else for the rest of my life. The fear of knowing that music is the thing that I need to live, the thing that has helped me live, the thing that has also made me want to not live. Music has created such a strange array of emotions, such an interesting palette of feelings for me. I like to be intimidated by my own ability to make it and my own ability to not make it. I like the intimidation that I have about having no idea whether today is going to be a good creative day or a bad creative day. And I'm learning that relationship with myself as well. It's about balance, you know. I'm not going to have good days every day. I'm not going to have bad days every day. I just hope that somewhere in between that thinking, I can have a good idea.
I think that's a fascinating note and a really interesting
interview
on. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate you giving me your time.
I really appreciate it. Lovely chat. Really good questions.